Good evening, and you're very welcome to another episode of the Women's Soccer Podcast here on finalwhistle.ie with myself, Breifne Earley, and of course, as ever, joined by Aaron Clarke. Aaron, it's been a while. The international breaks always tend to throw us up a little bit in terms of schedules, but it's been almost 2 weeks since we've had a show, and there's been so much happened. The under-19s have been and gone to the under-19 European Championships. Ireland, of course, had that phenomenal win in Páirc Uí Chaoimh against France. We're going to spend a good bit of time talking about those two things. A couple of other interesting tidbits, a few transfers to chat about as well. The window's still open, and a couple of internal transfers. Emma Doherty, of course, making that move from Sligo to Galway. Emily Corbett has been announced by Shamrock Rovers. She left Wexford earlier in the year. A couple of other names maybe floating around as well. We'll talk about all of that later in the show. Of course, small matter, the Olympics, Ireland not involved, but some big games and some recognisable faces from last year's World Cup will be part of that as well. The first round of games took place today. Yes, the opening ceremony hasn't happened yet, and our rugby team are already out. Played I think 4 games so far, 3 or 4 games already out of the competition. But the team sports tend to get run off very early, even before the official opening ceremony at the games. But how's your fortnight been? I suppose, Aaron, you've been busy between Cork and I know you were in Talca Park last night for the Avenir Sports Cup semi-finals, of course, which took place last night. Shamrock Rovers into their first final. Big result for them, given the start of their season. They'll be absolutely delighted to be back in the hunt for silver. We're 90 minutes away from that with a clash against the Holders Galway. That'll be some final in a couple of weeks' time. But first of all, how have you been, Aaron? Welcome back.
Not bad. It felt weird. It felt weird being at a game on a Wednesday night because this is the first time I've had it this season. You know, it's not the norm these days. The midweek games. It felt weird having no international break, no games, nothing last week. But now, listen, as you mentioned, with the Olympics is coming up, there's lots of sports coming up, lots of things to keep us occupied. It's been an interesting couple of weeks. All right. Good to get a bit of rest in as well, get away from social media for a little bit as well. We've been manic with all the Ireland stuff, eating a bit of humble pie, you know, especially around the question of Julianne Russell. I've had the opportunity as well to speak to her a couple of times in the last 2 weeks and just to see the joy. And
well, has she done something? Has she been busy?
Great to see young baby Rosie becoming the new face of Irish women's football. I think inspiring the next generation. It's been good. It's been fun. It's been interesting. Trying to plan out the second half of the year now. Decide, do I go to Georgia? Don't I go to Georgia? That's the biggest question on my mind at the minute.
Georgia, not exactly the top of the travel agents' hit list, but from a football point of view, given the way we beat them comfortably in the B League or in the qualifiers beforehand, I think it was that 9-0 or 11-0 or something crazy. It would be quite
11 at home, 9 away.
Yeah, so we'll be quite happy with that draw. And then, of course, the winners of that tie will face the winners of Slovakia and Wales away. So we could be heading towards Slovakia, or we could be heading towards, towards our neighbours, Wales, across the water, just to see how that goes. But 2 winnable ties, a nice draw for Ireland, but all, I suppose, created because of that result against France that we were hoping to keep the score down. I don't think anybody, even in the wildest dreams, expected to beat France, but not just to beat them, but to beat them in the manner we did. 3-1 winners. And how often can you say an Irish team are deserved 3-1 winners, and probably could have been more?
Right, I'm going to get the elephant out of the room first, because this is something that a lot of people have been saying. Yes, France made a lot of changes. However, that French team that did start that game would beat a lot of teams in the top 10 in the world and beat them comfortably. That was still a quality French side. And even when you see them bringing on the likes of Cascarino in the second half, the funny thing is the one memory I sort of have from even before the game on last Tuesday was I was chatting to Emma Duffy from the 42, and I was like, Julianne Russell's going to score tonight. I said to her, she turned around to me, no, Denise O'Sullivan's going to score. And when Denise O'Sullivan scored, there was a coffee cup sitting beside me. It was empty, but you could see the shake on it from the noise of the crowd. I've been at some big events. I've been at when England won the Euros in Wembley. I've been to, obviously, when Katie scored the goal in Brisbane, in Perth. But I don't think the noise, anything sort of magnifies that noise in Páirc Uí Chaoimh when Denise O'Sullivan hit that net. It was just one of them that it was written in the stars that the Cork girl from Knocknaheeny only around the corner would score that goal. And like what an evening and what a night. And like, I think it sort of stemmed a little bit from that England game, the second half performance with the Julianne Russell and Leanne Kiernan coming on and offering that bit of pace that bit more explosiveness. It's probably what Ireland have been crying for the last number of months. Like, even when you see when Jesse was started games up further forward, or you see when Leanne started a game, when there's only one of them, they tend to get very isolated. And when having sort of that focal player that they've had through the middle, even when one of them has started with the likes of Ciara Caruso or Amber Barra, it's sort of taken away because you're still sort of playing that, trying to get the ball up to them and hold the ball up again. Whereas I felt that the balls, when they tried to go long, or they tried to play the diagonal ball just to cut that defence, and the pace was just unbelievable. But like, it was just one of them nights. For me, it was interesting because I've had a couple of mad birthdays, to say the least. I had obviously traveled to Australia last year. I've watched Shamrock Rovers playing in the Europa League on birthday. I've covered games, but to cover the Ireland team, get their first win in the qualifiers, like, it was just one of them evenings that once the first goal went in, you sort of had that belief. I think when you look at when France scored early in the campaign, when France scored, they would have scored a second, they would have scored a third.
Yeah.
But you can just see that little bit of belief in the Irish team. They were like, no, not happening tonight. Everybody's talking about Cork. The players talking about the change that Cork sort of brought to them. The one thing I will say, the Cork media love having them there. Everything's about how the week in Cork. I enjoyed the day. A long day from a perspective of travelling up and down on the day. It's one of them that you would maybe avoid in the future, but it was a great occasion.
Before you go too far down that path, like, there's no one who lives outside the M50 has any sympathy for E-dubs at all. How important is it that we do visit that? Because we have the facility to put those games on elsewhere. Like, there's no reason why you couldn't have a women's game in Thomond Park, for example, or possibly one or two of the other Gaelic venues around the country could be converted. Like, Pearse Stadium is probably not enough around the ground. You need probably at least 2, if not 3 stands realistically. And there's not really much other than maybe Páirc Uí Chaoimh in Dublin and potentially Thomond Park as well, where you could do that. But it's so important that the girls in those regions get to see this Irish team as well, because a trip, you talk about a day trip to Cork. For people in Cork, it's a day trip to Dublin every time. If that's on a Tuesday or Wednesday evening, like we've seen, you really just can't. It's not practical.
So a couple of things there. I'll address them. I'll start off with spreading the games around the country. The biggest problem with spreading the games around the country, and then I'll address the Cork and Thomond Park one separately because they're a little bit more plausible. The problem with the likes of, and I've seen people tweet, bring it to Connacht next. You can't. Plain and simple. You can't, because the simple fact is, and a lot of people won't be aware of this, you could bring a friendly to somewhere like Pearse Stadium in Galway and pack it out, no problem. But you cannot bring a competitive game to a venue like that because you cannot use the terracing at all. That's why the terracing seats weren't even open. The terraces weren't even open in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, is that with the UEFA regulations, they can't have standing. It's like you'll see when Shelbourne play at home next week in the Europa Conference League, the behind the goal won't be able to be used, or the new stance that they put in, they can't be used, and that sort of limitates the option. For me, the question I would have in terms of Páirc Uí Chaoimh, I enjoyed it. I think it can work definitely if you pick the right game or you pick the right occasion to go. The problem I would have with Páirc Uí Chaoimh is, what was the cost? Because there's no doubt when you look at sort of the cost that Leinster are being talking about for hiring out Croke Park, say even if it's 25% of it, it's still probably 6 figures. So is it sustainable to do it on a regular? I don't
think the cost is the biggest factor, and I think we've talked about this before about how the FAI need to treat that women's national team, in my opinion, as the loss leader. And as long as it wipes its face, brilliant. As long as you get full houses, as long as you're getting the sponsorship coming in on the back of the eyeballs and the people at the great games, I think that's more important than the bottom line in the short and maybe even the early medium term. It's about building the women's team as a viable option that you can put them in a 15 or 20,000 seat capacity stadium like a Páirc Uí Chaoimh or a Thomond Park or somewhere of that ilk, maybe conversion of one of the GA stadiums as it grows. And you can actually deliver that and fill them across the country, and then start making proper money that can you put back into the grassroots of the game and into the Women's National League. I think that's what is more important than whether an individual game breaks even or not at the moment, in my opinion.
I was having a bit of a conversation with Dylan O'Connell on social media earlier today, a Cork journalist, and he was sort of saying something. He was saying something to me earlier, and I'm just really having a bit of a look at it there. The interesting thing regarding the Aviva is because Ireland are going to be at home against Georgia, if that game is on a Monday, say for example, there's a potential that you're looking at there's a touch and go turnaround with the Aviva, because the fact that Leinster are having to use the Aviva that weekend, playing the URC with them being there now. How is that going to impact that? Does that open the opportunity potentially to do the likes of a Cork? But then again, I know you're not going to like me saying this, but is a game against Georgia a potential Tallaght game?
I'd have it in Tallaght. I'd have it in Tallaght, and I would put 10,000 people in Tallaght and sell it out and have the place absolutely hopping. We saw the benefit that Shamrock Rovers got last week in the Champions League qualifying stages with a 9,500 people, 9,600 I think they had in the end, 9,684 or something. So almost 10,000, but the women could fill that easily. And I think there's a really good argument. If the Aviva is even awkward, I would just put it in Tallaght and sell the place out. George is not that big a draw.
No.
You get bigger for the next game against Slovakia or Wales. But I think, and I love to see this, and I love to even be thinking like this, is that the women's national team in itself is a draw. We're not going to see the opposition anymore. We're going to see our team. And that is the best way to develop any audience or any community around a team. And it's so exciting to see the steps that these teams have made. Has it been perfect over the last 2 or 3 years? No, I'd argue that we've probably not made the steps we should have over the last 15 or 20 years. I think we should have been qualifying for tournaments a lot earlier. We should have been qualifying and getting better results against better teams a lot earlier. What we did against France last week is not beyond the realms of possibility for us to do. Maybe not every time against top opposition, but we should be attacking teams like that. Any team that's not like top tier. And France are top tier. Let's not kid ourselves. But we should be going at teams like that. We have had the players over the years. We've maybe been reluctant to take the shackles off a little bit. And I'd love to see us go at teams an awful lot more. I think it'd be so exciting. We'd have no problem getting bums on seats to watch the games. The girls seem to love it, both the players and the supporters in the stadium. There's a real kind of buzz around this team at the moment. And that France, even though it was totally irrelevant in some respects, because with if we'd lost 1-0 or 2-1 or drawn a game,
If we lost 4-0, we'd still just get seeded.
Once Iceland or once Poland were capitulated, it didn't really have much meaning. But the fact that it didn't have much meaning and we still did what we did, I think is huge from a mentality point of view and from a confidence point of view for those girls and the girls coming behind them. They know they can beat France. They've done it.
I think the results. I get from when I look at it. And this is not to try and say, it's not a nothing game, but I get where Eileen Gleeson was coming from when I spoke to her after the England game, talking about seeding and playoffs and matching Poland's results and talking about, because that's the sort of thing when it comes to qualifying for competitions that they have to do. And I'm sure some people, when they sort of hear that sort of thing, they probably think, they're just going out to see, can they damage limitations? Like, they've tried to let the shackles off earlier in the group. They tried to do it against Sweden. But the problem at home in particular, against Sweden at home is, A, they didn't take the chances. They didn't take any of the chances they had. And B, the goals were so preventable because the goals were mistakes from us. Likewise, England in the Aviva. The first goal, it's a sloppy header from across, and the penalty. Sorry, that's for the penalty where the ball is headed out and Rush's handball. But even the first goal, it's preventable because they got caught with 2 players there. Like, a lot of the goals have come from silly mistakes at the back that if you look back at and ask Eileen Gleeson now, she'll say, if only they didn't happen. And then people will probably sort of saying, but like, the biggest thing for me is confidence is what come out of that France game. That's the biggest thing. Yeah, if they didn't get that result, you're sort of looking into the game then against Georgia, thinking, okay, we beat them, but then the next one, I'm a little bit unsure. But like, we've talked about it on this show about Ireland going and not scoring goals this year, and you could see how much that shackle sort of hindered them. Don't get me wrong.
How much of that came from the introduction of Julianne Russell? Because I know there was plenty of eyeballs raised and kind of no one looks, and kind of people going, I think Eileen might have lost the plot here a little bit, because on paper, Julianne's been out of the game for a year or two, giving birth to Rosie. She's back playing League of Ireland. We all know the player she is. She's a phenomenal person, phenomenal player, adds to any team she's ever been with. But at her stage of life, in terms of her age, but also the fact she was out of the game for a couple of years, she's now a mum. And she's playing at a level beneath, arguably, I would tend to disagree a little bit with some of the players, but she's playing in the League of Ireland versus playing in a professional full-time league. She shouldn't have had the impact she had over those two games. And yet, from the minute she came on at halftime in Carrow Road, it was so obvious that she was the one who had that little bit of a spark. But maybe, was it a little bit of naivety in terms of maybe not being part of the plan over a period of time? She just came in and said, I'm just going to make stuff happen, and she did.
I don't know if it's naivety, because the other side of it, when you look at Julianne, and it's sort of an inkling of like the fact that she's only really been back since the start of the season. Granted, she played the underdogs game last December, but like when you talk to Julianne, she'd probably tell you herself it's taken her a little bit of time to find where she needs to get to. But the thing about her now is when you're having conversations for Player of the Month on a regular basis now, Julianne's name is in every single one of them, and she's got to a level like when you listen to her talk, and you're sort of thinking, like, she ran the New York Marathon 6 months after giving birth. Like, that is an absolute freaking thing. If we could ever do that, even run that half of what she ran at, we'd be doing well.
Aaron, I'd be more impressed.
No, not him, but like if we could run the marathon, 6 months after stopping something, and then boom. But like, she was training up until very close to she gave birth, and you could see, like, the thing about her is Julianne could easily just say, you know what, I have a husband now, I have a young child, football's not really a priority.
I don't need it. Yeah.
You could see how much she enjoys it. And what I also got out of it, and I think this is what probably spurs her a little bit, is you see her company. She works for one of the big tech firms. I won't name the company, but people probably seen the post on social media. The company posting all over social media. There's some of their social platforms about her scoring for Ireland, the pride. You know what I mean? And she has that sort of work given it.
I didn't see that. She's still at the same company she was with when she went to us. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But like, that sort of thing, and you see them sort of priding to say, great to see, and they're sort of pushing her to be like, okay, go and do it. Like, even, I don't know, like, what you're aware of the whole situation of her in and around camp. Like, her husband was the in and around when she was training. She had Rosie in with her all week, and every player you speak to, the players were all saying Rosie was this, she was a bundle of joy, she was this, they all loved it, and it was that little bit of a change. Like, the biggest thing that come out of it, and I spoke to Leanne Kiernan about this, and she sort of said they were a bit envious of the likes of the USA, the likes of Australia, the other Sweden, other squads where they've babies in camp, and it sort of breaks that routine or that cycle. And they said it was just a breath of fresh air. And I think Julianne's personality is quite infectious as well when you get to know her as well, in the sense that, like, there's no doubt if she didn't think she could do it, she'd have told Eileen, listen, Eileen, thanks for the call up, but I don't think I can. Where I think she's good enough, and she has to start going forward.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember watching that documentary. I know we talked about, I don't know if you ever got around to watching it, about the Matildas prior to the World Cup. And a huge part of that for me was the setup of a camp which involved and welcomed family and babies and partners. Where there was babies involved, partners, there was leniency in terms of them coming in. We hear this about, footballers, generally male football squads, being kept away from their families for long periods of these tournaments. It's not healthy. It's not how the world works in the modern world. And it's great to hear that that's kind of how it's working now, which is phenomenal. We'll move on from the senior stuff, because we could be chatting about that all day, because it was probably Ireland's best ever result in a competitive fixture. Let's be honest about it. Beats everything we did at the World Cup, or even in the build up to the World Cup. I think
it is the greatest win that our Irish senior team has had.
100% of all time, really, because it's just and it puts the mindset that we're now at that level. Maybe not quite that level, but we can make it to that level, that we can compete with these top sides, the teams that we look up to and go, oh my God, they're amazing. But at the same time, they're just 11 players against us, and we have as good a chance to beat them. And it's great for the younger players into the squad. One of the people who was in the squad, we mentioned her a lot on the show. She's a personal favorite of mine because I just like her style. She has pace to burn. Doesn't quite seem to be in favor, although back in the squad now. Marissa Shiva, she made her Summer Cup debut at least last week. She came on as a second half substitute for Portland Thorns. Got on the score sheet, set up one, if not maybe two. She was involved in the build-up for two of the goals, and really made stuff happen in the same way maybe as Julianne did in Carrow Road for that second half. Just seemed to be involved in everything. She was playing that kind of 8 role, kind of just off the number 10, and she was out in the right, out in the left, but popping up in the center most often. And I think Ireland need to have that outlet as well. I think she adds that bit of pace that we talked about, Leanne and Julianne having, and she's another attacking outlet. I'd love to see her more involved in that women's senior national team.
I'm going to be a little bit critical here of Eileen Gleeson, okay, and I'm going to revert back to last year post World Cup. The Nations League games, we did not try a lot of things that we're now seeing that she's having to try in some of these games. Whereas that's the sort of thing of, whereas, you know, the likes of Marissa tried them in different positions. Jessie was being tried in different positions. She's now sort of having to do it where she should have done a lot of that last year. And then she'd have known, can Marissa give me an option there? But the one thing I will say is Marissa got dropped out of the squad, wasn't playing a lot of football. I felt sorry for Marissa. I felt she was a scapegoat at the World Cup, which is
100%.
She did not deserve to be a scapegoat. Granted, she gave away a penalty, and people can say, "Oh, she gave the penalty away," but there's 4 different incidences in the lead up to that penalty alone that could have prevented that penalty from happening. So I would not say that. And then when she come on forward in the World Cup, then under Eileen doesn't play. She hasn't played under Eileen yet. I would think realistically, if she continues to play for Portland, these Georgia games could be an opportunity, because I don't want to sound disrespectful to Georgia, but if we're not 4-5-6-0 up against Georgia in the first leg away from home with 20 minutes to go, I'll be extremely disappointed.
Do you bring on a substitute keeper if you're Eileen Gleeson in these 2 games against Georgia? Oh, it's 1 game against Georgia.
Okay, it's 2 games.
Up at halftime. Do you change?
There's the home and away game. I'm not going to comment on that, and the reason why I'm not going to comment on that is because I've been saying this since I don't know how long.
February 22, February 21 was the last time.
February 22, again in the Peamount Cup, February 22. I think Courtney's played 30-odd games consistently. But the problem is you see Courtney go down. Sometimes you think, okay, is it just a knock? Or is it just time wasting? One of these times, it's not going to be a knock. And then you're going to have one of these players, granted they train with the squad, but they've not played with the squad, or they've not sort of got that opportunity. Because you sort of mentioned, you know, other players and stuff like that. One player, and we will talk a little bit more about the under-19s in a minute, who I think is going to be really close to these next squads, is Katie Keane. I think the other 2 goalkeepers could potentially see themselves in trouble, because Katie's probably, there's no doubt she's probably establishing herself as probably, she's the best keeper in the league this year in the league. I know Amanda McQuillan has more clean sheets. Amanda's being very consistent for Shelbourne this year. The Shelbourne defence has been brilliant, but I think Katie Keane, at times you've seen in games at Athlone, she's had big moments for them. She had massive moments last week in the U19s, and I think she could be someone who could force her way through and could ascend that ranks to potentially be within the next 12 months be the number 2 choice goalkeeper.
Let's talk about the under-19s. Obviously, I think the results in themselves would be disappointing for most fans. We didn't really ever look like winning any of those games, I think it's fair to say. I only kind of glanced through them, to be fair, but we just didn't seem to really arrive at the championships. Or is that just being a bit too harsh?
I think it's been harsh. I expected Spain to score several goals in the first game. Spain are now in the final. Having won their semi-final. The 2 finalists have come from our group. Yeah. Like, the thing about this side is they started the year off not great. They weren't massively seeded when they went to the elite playoffs. Then they pulled off some big wins in the elites to qualify. Like, Ireland teams and competition draws tend to be a little bit of a sour patch at the minute in terms of who we tend to get. The last World Cup, you look at the Euros there for them, the qualifiers for these European Championships. Draws stuff tend to be hard. So like you're going into them games realistically. On paper, you're expecting them to lose 3-4-0 in every one of them games and not really be competitive. The Spanish game, did they ride their luck massively? Did Katie Keane have the game of her life? 100%. The defence I thought were superb in that game. Spain had 28 shots on target. But they've done very well, and that draw then turns out to be a really, really good result. Really, really good result in the end. And then you go into the second game, you take the lead against Germany. It was a nice finish from Leah O'Leary. She's only one of 5 players who have scored in the European Under-19 Championship for Ireland, joining Claire Shine, Megan Connolly, Sarah Rowe. I think the last one eludes me. I'll get it now in a second. But she's one of 5 players who have scored in an Under-19s European Championships. We don't qualify for many of these tournaments, and I think that's the biggest problem. And you see an awful lot of, how would you say, the clamour or the talk about home-based sessions, about under-23s teams. But this is the problem in the sense of, if we don't get them now, or if we don't get them soon, what's going to happen then with the likes of them players who don't necessarily make the grade quite quickly? The 5 players were Claire Shine, Savannah McCarthy, Kiva Keenan, Megan Connolly, and Leah O'Leary now are the 5 players. But if we don't get that transition where we have either both, in an ideal world I'd prefer both, but I don't think we're going to get both of the under-19, of the home-based sessions and the under-23s, because there's a lot of these players now. Granted, most of them are under-19s again next year. When they finish 19s, where are they going to go? What's going to happen with them? It's a really, really young side. I think 12 of the side are eligible for 19s again next year.
Looking through those squad lists, and I've got the Spain team here in front of me. 10 of the 11 that started that game are based in Ireland, which is phenomenal, really, from a Women's League of Ireland point of view. Most of the subs as well. I think I only make it 2 or 3 players.
18 of the squad have played National League this year. I've played League of Ireland football this year.
Sophie Moran, obviously not based in the country. And am I right in saying that it is Mary Phillips? No, she's at
No, Mary Phillips is at Athlone. The other one is, I'll get a few now while you continue to talk.
Aoife Turner, I think. But it's a very Irish-based squad. So we've proven that the girls who are playing in the league up to that age group are more than capable of mixing it with the European elite. So all we need to do is carry that through into the Women's National League and try and keep some of these girls involved. And we can raise the standard of this league and make it a real threat in terms of what's going forward. What do we need to do at this point, though, for those girls? Are we likely to see any of them breaking through to the senior international squad in the coming months? Are we likely to see any of them looking maybe towards England or further afield for a contract? Who can we expect to see in those conversations in the next 12 to 24 months? Are we looking at the likes of Jess Fitzgerald, maybe getting attention from across the water? Leo Leary, Joy Ralph? They'd all be names that we'd all expect. Kiola Bergen has kind of hit the ground running this season with Wexford.
She had a bit of a niggle. She got injured just before the last games. She didn't start the Wexford game against Shelbourne, the last league game before the Euro. So I don't know if that him. I think Katie Keane's probably the biggest name now in terms of potential at breaking through. However, the likes of Leo O'Leary, Aoife Kelly, they're the names who are probably getting more of the spotlight. They're the names who are getting a lot of the spotlight because of what they're doing. Playing outfield for their clubs, like Leo Leary obviously scoring in the All-Ireland Cup semi-final, Joy Ralph scored in the All-Ireland Cup semi-final. The biggest thing is, and this is where I'm hoping the next year or so is going to really help with the league, is we're now starting to see in England is that the clubs who aren't financially backed by Premier League clubs, the likes of the smaller championship teams, can't afford it. So this is where it's our opportunity. It's going to take government funding. It's going to take a lot of FAI funding. The problem is where does the finances come? But if they can continue to put opportunities like the introduction of if a player goes on a semi-pro contract, the minimum finances and stuff like that, that'll obviously help. But it's going to take a while for these sort of other teams to build in and around that. Like you're probably saying this generation, if the opportunity comes, a lot of them will probably go and move abroad and play abroad. I don't think it's this sort of generation. I probably think it's a couple of years away to where we can start to hold them sort of players that little bit longer. But the other side of it is, and this is the one thing I think a lot of people need to sort of take notice of, especially when people start talking about the younger players these days, is that a lot of these players, when they first make their breakthrough in the League of Ireland, a lot of them tend to be these sort of really, really good underlines, tend to be 16.
Yeah.
They can't go now until they're 18. So that's what a lot of people need to sort of focus on and be aware as well, as it's not like they can go at 17 because someone's coming and offering them. I think the FAI and sort of the likes of the PFAI, they need to push as well around the importance of the safeguarding of education and stuff like that. Because the one thing I would say to any young player is, you may be sold a vision by an agent, but the problem is you're not going to make money that's going to be sustainable for you to not do something outside of football when you to have to not work when you're finished football. Even the likes of the Katie McCabe's, they're not going to have the sort of money that they can retire on and they can say, I'm done, I don't have to work another day in my life. Women's football is completely different. So you'd sort of hope if the FAI can get things in the educational sector to help keep them there. Like, there's no harm in being an Amber Barrett going when you have your master's degree. You have something to fall back on. I know there's a lot of talk of some players now who are nearly finished college degrees and stuff like that. There's players who've transferred and done things like open degrees and stuff like that. But I think players need to be a little bit more strategic and not just jump at the first offer. And because a lot of these youngsters are developing quite well within the clubs that they're with at the minute.
I know we differ on strategies of how we can develop and bridge that gap between under 19 and senior, but and we won't agree on it because I know we're both fairly entrenched. You want the under 23s. I've always said the universities is the way to go because it gives them that backup that you're talking about there. You can have the 23s as well. I just don't think you'll get many fixtures. The World University Games every 2 years is a huge target, competitive target against really strong teams. That will give you that kind
just
of proper
to
bridge.
counteract you.
Go on.
We're now seeing a lot more under 23 fixtures. Like, we're seeing there was an international window it was November. England had senior team playing Nations League. They had a B team playing games, and they had an under 23s team playing games, all in the same window. Like, the thing is, an under 23s is only successful if you have games. If you don't have games, there's absolutely 0 point in having it if you don't have a set amount of games. The other thing, and I'm going to refer back to the Irish senior team, and this is something that I've had a gripe for many years about, is for many years, they've always played friendlies away from home. They've always been in warm weather camps away from home, these sort of things. Whereas if we were more based at home when you have opportunities to play games, you then have that opportunity that's not as financially costing to where you can bring in an extra 3 or 4 players. Have a couple of players come train with you for the week and say, okay, come in with us. We'll have a look at you. But whereas when you're going on the likes of a warm weather training, you can't do that because of the costs and stuff like that. So yeah. I think there's a lot that needs to be done from a footballing standpoint to sort of amalgamate it all.
If you're bringing players 6,000 miles across a continent and an ocean and leaving them on the bench, that doesn't seem like the most efficient use of resources either. Let's talk Avenir Sports Cup for a moment, because the 2 semi-finals took place last night. A little bit of a shock, I think, based on form coming into the last couple of weeks. Shamrock Rovers rode the look a little bit. You were at the game. Your thoughts on how Rovers progressed to that final, but 2-1 winners against Shells. They must have been delighted at the end of the final whistle.
Oh yeah, they were absolutely delighted. The one thing I will say is, I'll talk about the first goal first, because there's a lot of controversy slightly around social media. Fans who were at the game last night, it looked as though, and I've seen the replay back, it looked as though Leo Leary sort of controls it with her arm on it, but her arm is down by her side. Technically, under the letter of the law, if it touches your hand in the penalty area, it's no goal. But she took the goal quite well. Shamrock Rovers had to ride the look a little bit. Shelbourne would have been the better team overall. Shelbourne had so many chances. Even when Shamrock Rovers go 1-0 up, Gemma Quinn misses an absolute glorified chance. She's another 2 or 3. Second half in particular, she hits the post from 5 yards out. But when Joy Rav scored, you sort of thought, she's gonna. I was talking to someone last night. I said, she's gonna hit this. She just cuts in from the right on her left foot, curls it past Emmanuel Quillen. I think McQuillan can do a little bit better about that. But I think the refereeing decisions, I'm not going to turn around and say, I have an opinion on the refereeing decisions, but I'm not going to turn around and say which way or the other. But you can definitely say, in a sense, I'm not gonna discuss the decision. The referee's decision incensed some of the Shelbourne players, and you could see even at halftime when some of the Shelbourne players were walking off, they were sort of in a furious. There wasn't a lot of calmness towards it. And when the second half goes on, when they equalise, it's a nice goal from Gemma Quinn. Sort of comes off for a bit of a shin. It's a nice volley. Amanda Budden can't really do anything about it. And then once Rovers score, you're sort of thinking Shells are pulling under pressure here, but are they going to find the net? And it's sort of been a bit of a story of Shell's season in that sort of sense of with scoring and finding the net. Quinn had a great effort from about 5 yards out, hit the post, goes wide. Katie McCarran from 3 or 4 yards out. Katie McCarran just 3 or 4 yards. She doesn't find the net, does a scramble in the box. Amanda Budden does well to sort of keep the ball out. But like it was one of them games where Amanda Budden was there to wind the Shelbourne fans up when Rovers are leading late on. And I wouldn't expect anything else from Budden to waste that little bit of time, go down injured, take her time with kickouts, all that sort of stuff. Being an ex-Shells player, she's not really liked now from the fans because of the transfer to Rovers. She milked it last night, and you could sort of see the frustration spoiling towards the Shelbourne players and towards sort of Shelbourne fans and things like that. Like, I don't know if you've had a look at FAI Connect since that game ended. Amanda McQuillan was actually shown a straight red card after the final whistle.
Oh, I missed that completely.
So I only noticed when I got home last night that McQuillan was shown a straight red card, but that just shows you the sort of tensions and things like that.
Does she miss the final now because of that?
No, McQuillan is Shelbourne.
Sorry, apologies.
You're thinking, but so like you could see the Shells sort of how it was sort of in getting at them. I had a little bit of a chat walking off the pitch with Owen Wearing, and he was sort of saying to me, like, one of the things he's trying to do this year, and he's working on it a lot, is when they're training, is that they're ruthless in training, because then when they come to games, they're ruthless with their opportunities when it comes to scoring. Because I think that's Shell's biggest problem, is they haven't been able to find the net as regularly as they'd liked. The signing of Kate Mooney, she was there last night. She wasn't tugged out or on the bench. Be interesting to see how far away she is, what she can offer, because Noelle Murray's playing a little bit deeper this year. Noelle was actually suspended for the game. She's back this week, so she was suspended for the last league game, and she was suspended for the All-Ireland Cup due to yellow cards in the road competitions. Massive loss, but even you could see they brought Megan Smith-Lynch on with 20 minutes to go just to try and get 15 minutes ago, try and get a bit of a spark in it. But for me, it's one that Shells will say they definitely let slide. Did Rovers ride their luck at times? Yes, but the thing is, Rovers held tall and they took their chances when it came to them. And I think it's a really important win for Shamrock Rovers to make that final.
Yeah, you talked about a couple of players there from Shell's point of view. Obviously, Megan Smith-Lynch, almost like a new signing because she hasn't really played this year with injury. Kate Mooney has come into Shell's as well. We talked about Emily Corbett going to Rovers. That's a pretty high-profile change as well. Emma Doherty, I think we touched on that in the last show, making that well-trodden path at this point from Sligo to Galway. That's a big change for them because she was kind of the poster girl of their whole scholarship program and kind of building your life in Sligo, and that's going to be a bit of a kick in the teeth for them.
I'd be interested to see, and this is something that maybe you're a little bit of investigative research in the next couple of weeks as the colleges start to come back, is has she stayed in Sligo and just playing with the college still, or has she looked at moving? That'll be an interesting question. There was no doubt, and you feel sorry for Sligo in this, for Tommy Ewan in this sort of sense, that because they had struggled, if the right opportunity came, she was going to go, and you can't blame her. You can't blame her at all. You can't. And but like as you say, with transfers, Megan Smith-Lynch, she hasn't played since the cup final when she come off injured against Athlone, and like it's 8 months. You wouldn't have thought it'd have been that long. She'd have been nearly better off doing the ACL the way it's worked out for her at this stage. But like a new signing, Ava Mahoney played last night. She come off in the second half. She was okay. She wasn't great. I thought Rowan McLaughlin was probably one of Shell's best players last night. But for me, the players who looked like new signings and looked like a breath of fresh air last night were some of them Rovers players who've just been at the Euros. You could see they were brimming with confidence. Like the way Joy Ralph took that goal and cut in and curled it with her left foot. Superb finish. I think, Rovers will definitely get a spike off of them players sort of coming back in with that mentality. Granted, Rovers have probably let one. I think there's been one out the door for Rovers this off season with Shannon Cody going to DLR Waves, but Emily Corbett was there last night. She she was there pre-game, but obviously she was cup tied because she played for Wexford earlier. I would expect her to be, if she doesn't start Saturday, I would expect her to come off the bench against Cork and sort of get a bit of an impact. She's under a little bit of pressure for me, Corbett, is just because the way things haven't worked out since leaving Athlone. I know she's only 20 and she can reinvent herself and but she needs to sort of get regular game time. That was the one thing she struggled at Wexford, was just getting that regular game time. When you sign and then you hear Rihanna Jarrett's coming back, and it sort of puts you back on the back foot a little bit. And then when Rihanna gets injured, Quayla Bergen's just took that opportunity. And so for Emily, she just needs to find somewhere where players and other colleagues and management are just going to put an arm around her and just say, listen, it's okay, let's work together, let's get you back to show that potential that you've got there, because she can score goals, and I think if she can start to find the net, she could be really valuable for Rovers in the second half of the season.
Some other transfer rumours that have been doing the rounds over the last few weeks. Of course, Saoirse Noonan had been tipped potentially for a long shot. She had been training with Cork, allegedly, but she has been announced by Glasgow Celtic, so she's not going to be on Lee's side for the second half of the season. Not really a major surprise there, let's be honest.
3-year deal.
Yeah.
It's a great deal.
It's a great deal from her point of view. Yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah, 100%. It's a good commitment for her. I think she could go there. She could go there and do very well. She's probably a little bit below sort of the level of, many times of strikers come out of this country of a Claire Shine. But if she can get a bit of form at Celtic, there's no reason why she can't score 15, 20 goals a season for them and sort of give them a really good option up top. The one thing I will say, and I don't know if clubs really like this, but FAI Connect is becoming journalists' best friend these days, because you can start to see now when players have left clubs, when they're deregistered and they're registered with other clubs. Like, we're seeing players who could potentially make debuts for other clubs this weekend have now registered with a new club, haven't played previously with a different club only Saturday week just gone, haven't started a game with them, and like I assume. For clubs, it's probably a little bit frustrating because they have to, when they get registered with the FAI, they're going through that process. But it's something that it's good to see when you especially when you see clubs sometimes milking announcing signs. It can be quite frustrating when you know a player's been signed for weeks and clubs don't say nothing and stuff like that. It's one of the things that pre-season can be quite frustrating for certain clubs, but there's a few more to make the move. I know Peamount announced Aoife Brophy today. I did see some of the Peamount players sort of saying the best of luck to Erin McLaughlin on social media last week. She had a signed number 10 McLaughlin jersey, Peamount jersey. So by all accounts, she's making that move across the water. I've heard of a number of different teams. I haven't heard confirmed who just yet. I know there was interest in Cork's Eve Mangan as well. Whether she goes or stays at this moment, it's to be seen, but there's also I'm expecting another addition to potentially come into Cork City within the next, could even be announced this week as well.
Go on, you might as well let us know. Of course, you're talking about one of the FAI Connect ones that has come up has definitely been
this is
from DLR to Peamount. Anyone who's astute will have worked out who that is.
No, I'll tell you the other one off air because I don't want to announce it because it was said to me by somebody.
Fair enough. But yeah, you're right. There are players who played for one club maybe 10 days ago that are now listed on the other clubs. When you go into the profile, they've listed with the other club, and it's obvious the transfer has gone through. It just hasn't been officially announced yet. Just to run through quickly, as soon as we are live, the scores from today in the Olympics, all full times. Canada 2-1 winners against New Zealand. Spain beat Japan also on a scoreline of 2-1. Germany 3-0 winners against Australia. Same scoreline, USA versus Zambia, while Brazil beat Nigeria 1-0. And hosts France beat Colombia 3-2. St. Pat's did have a good 3-1 win as well in the Europa Conference League. A little bit unexpected there from them, but they look to be in a good position against the Deuce of Liechtenstein.
Lovely free kick from Jake Mulroney.
He is a class act. We shouldn't be talking about the men's league on the women's podcast, but sometimes you just got to acknowledge a bit of quality.
Let's talk about the defending champions.
The defending champions.
Yeah, I thought they were going to be derailed at one stage last night when they go
against Wexford last night, and I thought when I didn't see much of the game. I was out, and I got in for just the penalties. But I thought for the penalty shootout, once Goa missed the first one, I thought they were going to struggle, but they really came through. And Jessica Berlin made some really, really tidy saves to turn that around and to win that comfortably in the end, 4-2 on penalties by the end of it.
When you're 2-0 up and comfortable enough in that sort of game, you think they're going to see it out. And then once Wexford scored that first, I think the first goal to make it 2-1, I'm started thinking this could be a little bit difficult. And then good to see Rihanna Jarrett on the score sheet. I think this is a really important win for Galway. Massive win for them. And I don't think we can underestimate it, because if you look at when they played Wexford in the league about a month, 5 weeks ago at this stage, they were unbeaten. They were going well. That started the run of the 3 defeats in the 4 games when they lost to Wexford, Shells, and Bohs. Whereas if they'd have gone out of that cup competition, I think it really could have been the start of a spiral of that second half of the season. So I think for them getting over the line, it was a really, really important result for them. It's difficult for Wexford because you're having to travel so far on a Wednesday night. I know we've had this conversation about midweek fixtures. I'm not a massive fan of them. I understand why this game was put on the midweek for the simple fact that they moved the game to facilitate the under-19s, because there's no doubt Wexford probably wouldn't have wanted to play that game without the likes of Maeve Russell, Kayla Berg, and Jane Merrin, although she didn't end up not starting the game. Then you look at the Galway side, there was 4 or 5 of the under-19s coming from Galway. So I understand why they moved the games to the Wednesday. It's not ideal, but I think that's sort of one for Wexford. When they get that back to penalties, they'll be kicking themselves that they couldn't sort of put up a better show in the shootout and get themselves into a final. No doubt, no sort of announcement yet on venue, but if they go by last year, it would have to be Athlone.
Yeah, I'd expect it to be Athlone for a load of reasons. One, the venue's pretty good, surface is pretty good, and it's halfway between the two as well. So my expectation is Athlone, but it shall remain to be seen. You never know. TG Carr might have had input into that as well.
And it's Saturday the 17th of August is the date for the final. There is a full round of league fixtures that weekend, but the games between Galway and Shamrock Rovers the league games they had that weekend will just be postponed. I think Shamrock Rovers had a problem.
And Galway were down in Cork. So, yeah, likely that those games will be moved one way or the other, maybe to the following weekend. There seems to be a free weekend the following week on the 24th of August.
I think, is that not FAI Cup again after that?
Oh, it might be, actually, now you mention it. Let's take a quick look briefly at the league table as it stands going into the games at the weekend. Athlone Town, 3 points clear at the top from Shells. Galway with a game in hand, 6 points further back. And then a whole glut of teams maybe in the a point or two separating them the whole way down. Peas, Wexford, Cork, 1 point between each of them. Cork with a vastly inferior goal difference at this point in the season. Just can't find the back of the net, but they will be hoping to put that right this weekend when they're out in action. Then we have Shamrock Rovers, Bohs, and Treaty with a point separating each of them. A bit of a gap back to DLR on 7 points. And then Sligo, despite having 2 games in hand, just 3 points so far, 3 draws, no win for them yet. Would you fear, looking at that league table now, Aaron, that Sligo may finish the season? I know they're halfway through. They've played everybody once. Where could you see them getting a win in the second half of the season? Who do they target?
You know, this is the one thing I say I never want to see happen in terms of teams not get a win. But the problem at this stage is I can't tell you I see them getting a win against anybody at this stage, because they haven't really shown that next. I hope they can in the second half of the season, because I want to see every team at least winning at least one game. But it's difficult to see where they can get it. You would say on paper their biggest chance is probably against DLR Waves, but that's going to be a really, really difficult game, considering Waves have brought in some good players as well. So it's hard to say, unless Tommy Ewell can pull a rabbit or two out of his hat before this transfer window closes to help strengthen the squad. The other question you'd have, and excuse me, I know there's been a lot of speculation about them, is can he hold the Lockery sisters as well? There's been a lot of speculation about them, especially off the back of the Euros as well, because one of them had a superb tournament for Ireland.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that pans out over the next 6 months. I don't expect to see anyone leaving Sligo the rest of this window. I think you're pretty solid in terms of what they have, but just I saw the Sligo LGFA announce their minor team for their All-Ireland final at the weekend, and the likes of Cara King, Kiva Flynn, there's a few others as well who have been in squads involved at that level with Sligo LGFA. Murren Devaney is involved with Leitrim in their All-Ireland final in 10 days' time as well. So there's just distractions that aren't helpful when you're trying to get a squad together. You don't have full access to players because they've got other commitments. It's just a little bit messy.
It's something that Tommy has allowed, even when his time in Athlone. Like, the thing about his time in Athlone is he had the calibre of players that he could trust the likes of Larry Ryan to go off and play Gaelic football. He could trust the likes of Murren Devaney. But at the minute, for him, the biggest problem is if he has a Murren Devaney off playing Gaelic football, that has a massive impact on the calibre of his side at the minute. And that's where it becomes a big issue. And as you say, with the Sligo minor team, like, if you're missing more and more of them, like, for Sligo to have any chance of winning games or getting results in games, Sligo have to have their best 11 and their best squad available and playing at an 8, 9 out of 10 to sort of get results. Whereas if you take one, even two of them out of there, you're severely hampering them. And I understand why Tommy does it, because of the fact that he wants to try and keep the players. I understand that. But the problem is, and we've had this conversation when we've had guests on this show about players sort of coming back into soccer after gaps. Whereas I don't think this sort of dual player or players coming back into the league, having not played in the league for a while, will be able to be possible going forward very much, because the demands of a League of Ireland player have gone up an awful lot. We're seeing teams now, a lot of them are training 3 nights a week at least, plus the game at the weekend. So I don't think for how long is it going to be possible to have that sort of dual access players. I
agree. Let's talk about the fixtures quickly, and let's try and wrap this up because we don't want to go over the hour. We're already way past the time we had planned to be on air for. We start with the, I suppose, the game that probably most people will be looking at this weekend, Peamount and Athlone. It has the potential to be a phenomenal game. It's live on TG Car, of course, 7:35 kickoff. It's kind of a statement. Peamount, really, it's win or bust here. If they lose this game, their season is effectively over, other than a cup run. Yeah, and I know James O'Connell's going to paint this on the wall nearly. I see Athlone winning this game potentially 2-0, 3-1. And I just think Athlone are going to hit that ground running. Both teams have had the long gap, so there's no excuses for Casey Howe. Got her first start for Northern Ireland recently. She's going to come into this game brimming with confidence. I think if you look at it sort of as a league as a whole, I think Casey is probably in a group of about 5 players now with 9 games to go, chasing the Player of the Year award. So players like that are going to come and continue to try and put performances in the second half of the year, and I wouldn't be surprised if Casey finds the net a couple of times and Athlone win this game by a couple. And I think you've just done James's job for him on Saturday evening. I will actually be there, so there's no doubt someone is going to say it to me. Oh, you will hear it back, absolutely. Shells DLR Dublin Derby, Talca Park, 2:00. Chance for Shells to go top of the league at least for a couple of hours, at least, with a victory in this game. It is a chance, but for Shelbourne, they need to find the net. Simple as that. They've scored more than one league goal. I think they've scored in 3 games. They've scored more than one. One of them was against DLR. But they're just not finding the net, and them draws are starting to stack up, and they can't afford to drop points again on Saturday. I think DLR will be sort of up for this, considering they've brought in extra players. But I think Shell should win this, and if they're on form, they should win it comfortably. Okay, across town, Bows and Sligo. Sligo, we've talked about them. We're not going to rehash and bring up old wounds, but it's been a rough season for them. Bohemians haven't been phenomenal this year, but you would expect them to take it. But Sligo have a really good track record of taking points back from Bohemians games. So, if you think back to this stage last year, when the sides met in Dublin, we were having this exact same conversation. And I turned around to you and said, Bow should win it comfortably. Sligo went and beat them. Yeah. The thing about Bows is they're that inconsistent at the moment. Granted, Ken has brought in some more players, but he's brought in a lot of youngsters. The one thing that I think a lot of people will be watching, because she got her debut in a friendly last weekend, is will Laura McCabe be involved in that game? If she will, that'll bring a little bit of an extra spotlight onto it. But
this is the sort of game where I don't think Sligo Rovers can win the game. But if Sligo Rovers are up to it, and if Sligo Rovers are firing on all cylinders, they could come away with a point in the pool. It's the sort of game that both have to be winning.
Well, now you've written James and Tommy's team talks at the weekend. Let's see if we can do a favour. And
I would love. Ken Kieran's going to hate me for this, right? But I would love Sligo Rovers to get the win this weekend. I don't think they will. I think Bows will be too strong. But I would love Sligo to end that, because I'm nearly going to be saying that every week from now on.
Shamrock Rovers and Cork. Can Danny get another few points? They've had a really good season. Let's say Sligo, Shamrock Rovers and Cork. Two mid-table sides. Again, Shamrock Rovers a win would see them leapfrog Cork. There's a lot in it for both managers. I think, and you can correct me on this if you think I'm wrong, but I think that Shamrock Rovers need to win nearly every game between now and the end of the season, and they have to make probably win a trophy or make both finals for them to pull back how bad the start of the season was for them.
Yeah, not going to disagree with you. We talked about when these sides played in the reverse fixture. We sort of said that it was an opportunity for Shamrock Rovers to kickstart a little bit of momentum, and then Cork went bum. No thanks. See you later. The problem with Cork is, not the problem. The thing about Cork is that they may not always play the best football in the league, but they've that little bit of fire, or that little bit of fight in them. Like, Bow should have had them dead and buried when they played Bows. And late on, they dug it out, they ground it out. Like, I wouldn't say that this is a foregone conclusion that Shamrock Rovers are going to win this game. I wouldn't be at all shocked if Cork City come away with a point. I would definitely say Shamrock Rovers have to be winning this game, but I wouldn't be shocked if Cork do come away with a point.
Final game of the weekend. Wexford make the long journey west to Limerick. They take on Treaty United. Treaty, we didn't mention them in the players being released and moving around, but they did issue a statement today. 4 or 5 girls have left the club, including Fiona Bradley is the one that sticks in my mind, but a couple of the bigger names, Kayla, Kyle, and a few
LOI.
others. Yeah, like girls who had come in and made an impact for them. Some big losses there in terms of both having local players as well as some of the imports just not quite working out.
Yeah, but the other thing is, and I don't want to, and this is the problem, I'm damned if I'm don't, or damned if I do here, because I've said about the players coming in and how it hasn't always worked. Whereas if these players are only coming in for a couple of months and then leaving, it doesn't look great for Treaty. But they've brought in some other really good players. And the problem is how long can you do that? How long can that be sustainable of bringing these players in, chopping and changing, new ones coming in? Like, it becomes difficult to try and build that brand or build that. But because they've had a good start to the season, and you were hoping the second half of the season with the additions they'd kick on. But I think it remains to be seen what way Treaty are going to go in the second half of the year. I'm going to say I don't necessarily like the way the players released has sort of come out, because it was on the bottom of an announcement of another sign, and just, even just come out and say we've released the following players have left the club. We wish them well. I don't like it just on the end of a statement just to say, oh, by the way, these players have left. Like, you've seen it with Kerry Letman, you've seen it when Leah Riley left Shells. The Shells posted a photo of it. We've seen it with other clubs. When players have left, they've just posted on social media just to say they've left. Put in the end of a statement. I don't really like that, but
you can just be classy, and regardless of how it ends, sometimes it ends amicably, sometimes less so. But it doesn't hurt just to kind of go, didn't work out. We wish them the best of luck. Thanks for everything you did for the club. Even if that's not what you feel, that's just a classy way to kind of end these kind of relationships, because you never know. It's a small community. It's a small game. You never know when somebody might be walking back through the door as an opponent, or even back as a sign-in in a season or two under a fresh regime. You never quite know how it's going to pan out.
Come here, I need to bring a sign-in up to you. Not in this country though. I don't know if you've seen it. Dana Sheriff has left.
I did see that. She's
going to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
In the second tier, and that's a very good move for. But like, even when you see, I think it was what's her name? Was with Treaty last year. Her name's just gone out of my head. Up the forward,
Kate Winter,
who's gone and signed. Claire Winters, who's gone and signed with an NWSL team on a short-term contract.
Yeah.
But like these signings can work when these players come in from abroad if they are maximised. So we're not saying bring these players in doesn't work, but it's just about having the right players in.
Absolutely. Well, listen, that's it for the week. We will leave it there. We're back again next week. Of course, we're talking about the FAI Cup. Will there be a non-league surprise? 4 ties, absolutely primed for a bit of a shock. Will we find our first non-league victory in the FAI Cup in recent times? I think we might, we'll talk about a bit more next week, Aaron, unless you've something you want to say now. Get yourself even
Was Shelbourne under 18s team the last team to cause an upset in the FAI Cup? That year they reached the semi-final when they beat Cork City, Castlebar Celtic. I think they might have been the last to cause a big upset.
Yeah, it's been a while. We've seen some pretty heavy drubbings for non-league sides, amateur sides in the competition over the last few years. I think the 4 lowest teams on the table are playing the non-league sides this year. If there's going to be a surprise, it's going to be this year. And unfortunately, I think it could be in the Northwest. Terranure, for me, are probably one of the best amateur sides in the country at the moment.
You've just brought something to my mind.
Struggling.
You've just brought something to my mind.
It's going to be a surprise. That's potential.
I have a transfer for you. Kira Smith has left Bowes.
Gone back to Terranure?
Gone back to Terranure.
Yeah. So again, if she's available, which she would be cup tied. It would be interesting to see how that pans out. So I think Terranure Sligo is a potential banana skin that Sligo will want to avoid, particularly given Tommy's history in the competition, and like Murren lifted this trophy last year, she won't want to be at the first round to non-league opposition. So I think that's probably going to make or break Sligo's season in terms of if they need to avoid defeat in that game, or it could be very, very embarrassing for everyone involved in the showgrounds.
100% agree.
That's a bit harsh, but I'm calling it as I see it. I think it's set up for Terranure to come and take a bit of a shock. I hope it doesn't happen because I think it's important that the league clubs are strong, but it will be interesting to see how it all pans out. Anyway, we're still waffling. We'll leave it there. Aaron, lovely chatting to you as always. We will chat to you again next week.